You're not healed. You're just isolated with no one to trigger you. Have you heard that saying? But the truth is that you are healing the wound within yourself. And then once you do that, there are no triggers because triggers only exist within you. And sure, there's something to be said about, oh, I was around this person and they don't trigger me anymore like they used to. Yeah, because you healed that emotional wound within yourself. Meanwhile, it has nothing to do with whether that person still triggers you or not. Okay? Some people are just not healthy to have around. And another thing to consider is that healing trauma doesn't mean it goes away. Healing trauma means you come to accept these things about yourself that are, some of them, going to be there forever. But it also doesn't mean suffering forever, but learning how to be compassionate with your suffering without creating more suffering, which can be the case when someone is avoidant. Just because you've shut out a whole bunch of people from your life doesn't mean you're avoidant. Unless they were really great people and they were very nurturing and loving toward you and they offered your life tremendous value and you shut them out. Well, then yes, you're being avoidant. Otherwise, you've closed the door on people because they were not offering value to your life. They were not nurturing to you. They may have even been people pleasing you. And you can see through that disingenuous way of being too, because you were probably that way once yourself. And so, for anyone that just wants to be true to their spirit, to their soul, to become more aligned with their own energy, learn how to grow from the inside, then people are going to choose solitude. And that's not avoidant, that's personal growth. Because that time in solitude is allowing us to acknowledge what we're feeling. We're creating space for reflection. We're giving ourselves permission to heal. And then we decide who those people are that we're going to continue to have in our lives. The sad reality of that truth is that there might not be many people left. And let's face it, you might have been one of those people who didn't choose the best people to have in your life to begin with. This video is going to go through a few things for you to consider in determining whether or not you are in fact avoidant or you're simply someone who prefers being alone. So let's start with that motivation. What is motivating you to have this alone time? So for someone who is avoidant, it's likely that you're operating from a place of fear, discomfort, and maybe even a difficulty with intimacy. And it's likely that you have a hard time sharing your feelings with someone else. So this stems as a defense mechanism. And those fears that you're carrying with you are things like fear of rejection or judgment or not being good enough. I'll reject them before they have a chance to reject me, sort of thing. Or they're getting too close for me and I don't have the emotional capacity to be there like that for someone else. Versus the person who likes to be alone. The motivation of being alone comes from a genuine enjoyment of their own solitude, the enjoyment of the ability that they have to sit and reflect, to gain their own personal insights that are sourced not from a place of fear, but from a place of love and peace and joy, or even just a neutral place. And likely they already are very independent by nature. And so it's very much a preference for them. It's not there as a shield for protection against a fear of some sort. It's from a place of deep love, deep self-love, and contentment. The motivation is probably the most misunderstood, especially by people who don't relate. The secure attachment that the loner has is with the one they have with themselves. So it's an interesting place to be because most people need other people to feel safe in this world, while the loner has a sense of all oneness. We just talked about the motivation being driven either by fear or by love. And so then let's take a look at the emotional experience. When an avoidant person spends time alone, it's going to give them a sense of safety. They're going to feel less overwhelmed. They're going to feel more in control of the things that are happening, but they also feel lonely and they feel a great sense of disconnection. Now, they may very well be the person who has a preference for solitude, and moving forward, this is where the biggest shift will have to occur from avoidant to securely alone. removing the loneliness. And that comes when the self-love enters. So the person who likes to be alone from a place of self-love experiences solitude. And that's something that they experience in a very nourishing, grounding, and recharging way. It's not that they're shutting anyone out. They're just really content with the way things are. There's little to no anxiety about needing connection. They know that if they need connection, they have many ways to create connective experiences for themselves. Their emotional experience is content and satisfied. The next factor to consider when understanding if you're avoidant or if you're simply content to be alone comes down to looking at what's happening in your relationships. So, as I've already noted, the avoidant person might push people away, keep emotional walls up, and they even struggle with closeness. Like, even when they want to be close with someone, it's really difficult. And they're not going to put any trust into relying on depending on other people either. It could be this sense of hyper independence. And yes, they have that protective shield up with the people in their lives because it's all about protection and control to avoid any painful emotions. And the avoidant person doesn't just avoid people, they're also avoiding their own feelings, remember, which is why the feeling of loneliness is the strongest for avoidance. But the person who likes to be alone, they understand the value of supportive relationships, but they're very selective. They can still form deep, healthy bonds with people, but even within those bonds, they still cherish their alone time. You'd think, oh, you're avoidant because you're avoiding relationships, but they really feel that the most important relationship is the one they have with themselves. They don't feel threatened by intimacy. They just balance it with solitude. Because in solitude, this is where we're forging our character our own way, which is very important for us since we've likely been shaped by the external demands and expectations of other people. So some of us may have lost our own identity in others. So this is a chance for us to finally find ourselves, create our own identity. And not only is this very important to our own personal growth, but it's something that takes a lot of time. And during that time, we're going to feel that sense of isolation. We're going to feel loneliness. We're going to feel the depression because we're grieving the life that we once had while we wait for this new sense of life to be created. So this is why I say, if you are somebody who is in that avoidant place, well, with a few shifts of self-awareness and understanding, you can shift into more of that okay to be aloneness. And with that, also opens you up to form connections with other people if that's what you choose. Because what we look at next is the difference between what is going to pull someone toward being avoidant versus what pulls someone towards their alone time. The avoidant is already pulling away from any notion of togetherness. They just don't want it. They don't want to experience any vulnerability. They're not going to be available with their emotions with other people, especially if they sense anxiousness or clinginess or neediness from other people. This is really going to set them off. They just don't want that level of emotionality in their interactions with other people. And it's not because they don't have care or concern for other people's emotions. They just feel they are in some way responsible for them. And so it's a huge turnoff. And not a turnoff in the way you would think, but like it comes down to a lack of capacity for emotional connection within themselves now, which is maybe because they're just drained from all the giving that they used to do, that they've completely just cut themselves off from doing that at all. And like I said, this is something that can change. That's all part of healing the avoidant attachment. And they're going to need to establish an emotional container within themselves now for their own feelings, for themselves to feel confident enough to hold space for someone else. They may have been holding space for other people this whole time to feel abandoned and rejected and betrayed by them, that they're like, forget people. People suck. I don't want to be around people anymore. But it's left an emotional void within themselves. And anytime someone comes to them with some level of emotionality, they're like, no, I can't do this. because they don't have the container within. They don't have that, oh, like, what am I feeling other than just disconnected and I just don't care, but I do care. I'm a caring person. So what is wrong with me? Something is totally off here. And that's how you're going to know that you're in this avoidant stage. The avoidant person is not prepared emotionally to be in some big entanglement with someone else again, to experience that state of overwhelm again. They're not going to be able to handle it. But the truth is here for the avoidant is they haven't learned anything about healthy boundaries either. So what they do when they feel someone might be overstepping things with them, instead of communicating their needs, they just put up the walls and they just shut it down. So with the avoidant, not only are they avoiding people, but they're avoiding having to set boundaries with other people too. So they just build walls. Now, for the person who likes to be alone, they have containment, not only for other people's feelings, but for their own. They have healthy boundaries. They communicate them. They have become the boundary. It's like they just emanate a person who is able to take care of their needs and who doesn't feel any guilt or shame for that. They're very emotionally connected. And that's the reason why their need for alone time is set up, because of a need to recharge and to enjoy that opportunity for reflection. It's a pretty strong craving that they have, as much as it is an innate response to be in tune with themselves. This is how they feel best in the world. So their alone time is chosen proactively. It's not a reaction to some sort of discomfort or as a way to protect themselves from being needed by others. And finally, there's this big difference in the core belief systems. What is driving everything that we do is our thoughts, is whether it's conscious or unconscious. It's not all the people out there. It's not all of the things that are happening out there in the world. It's what we think about those people. It's what we think about everything that's happening in the world. And so for the avoidant, they believe that if they get too close, they're going to lose themselves again. They're going to get hurt. If they commit to this thing, they'll get taken advantage of. They'll feel trapped. It'll be a waste of their time. It's not worth it. They believe that people suck, so I don't want to have anything to do with them. And it's kind of like they just don't have a sense of autonomy when they're around other people. They either feel all too consumed and then they have to shut down, or they show up already shut down and then they don't make any space for the connection. So their awareness here isn't formulated in the healthiest way, in that they might not even see themselves as an avoidant. Instead, they see everyone else is flawed and annoying or threatening and unsafe. But the beliefs for people who have that preference to be alone, they would be thinking, I just enjoy my own company. It has nothing to do with anyone else, Yes, people can be certain ways. But regardless of that, I choose solitude. And I enjoy the company of other people when I choose to, when it's in alignment with my needs. Because remember, their boundaries are so becoming, okay? Like their boundaries are not walls. They will just be very open to people about who they are and why they are that way, knowing that most people aren't going to understand this. So I'm not going to explain myself too deeply. It could just simply come to this, that just because they want me to spend time with them doesn't mean I have to. I have to respect that I enjoy more time with myself than I do with other people. There's nothing wrong with that. And I enjoy more time with myself than most other people do. I can't expect people to understand that. And I also understand that I might come across as avoidant, but it's also not my responsibility to explain myself to anyone. The person who loves their alone time isn't operating in a way that is harmful to other people. And it's not harmful to themselves. When you're just staying to yourself, not bothering other people, bothers people. What do you mean minding my own business, not bothering other people, bothers people? So you understand that you can connect on a level that you are comfortable with. You can set boundaries for yourself. You can continue to be emotionally available in a reasonable way with people. Maybe you're just not as emotionally available as they want you to be. One last thing I'll mention here. is for the people who are extremely introverted, which I know I'm sure a lot of you are. You do not have a strong need to connect with people, which will have you coming across as very stuck up or too good for everyone else or snobby or whatever. So it really takes someone with a high level of self-esteem. And it's been said that the people with the highest IQ are the people who love to spend the most time alone. But yeah, you have to have this high level of self-esteem to operate with such a high level of introversion because you can't let other people's opinions of you trick you into thinking that something is wrong with you and that you are this avoidant person. When clearly, given the information I just provided you, you are far from it. You are very secure and happy. And yes, sometimes you might have some feelings of sadness and loneliness because you're human. That's normal. That comes up. But it doesn't overtake you. It doesn't become you. You're able to give yourself compassion and move through it. Because when you live in a state of peaceful solitude, you're not hiding from your pain. You're available to it. That's what I mean. The avoidance is also emotionally unavailable to themselves, never mind with other people. And not for faults of their own, right? It's like they were just so in tune to the emotions of other people that they never learned how to tune into their own. And so if you are someone who is avoidant, that's what it's going to come down to, is becoming more connective with yourself. While you're spending all this time alone, what are you doing with it? Are you using it to your benefit, or are you just wallowing there in self-pity, which is the opposite of self-compassion? So if you're enjoying your peaceful solitude, you're not there hiding from your pain. You're creating a little sanctuary for yourself. And part of that is acceptance. Healing is accepting the reality, the person, the nature of yourself, not trying to forget about it, not trying to make it go away, not trying to numb it, not trying to avoid it, you know, showing up for yourself. But yeah, like if you are someone who is thinking, gosh, I am actually quite avoidant, well, this is a good starting point for you to focus your healing on, to start changing those beliefs that you have, to start looking at how you might have been avoiding your own feelings and abandoning your own needs while you've been healing from some pretty damaging relationships in your past. And even if you do want to be able to open yourself up to more connections and be a social butterfly, well, that's possible too. You just have to start with your own inner work to understand what your needs truly are. So you can put an end to this pattern of self-abandonment. And one last thing that I would like to say is, in terms of these beliefs that are out there, that we have been conditioned to believe that the antidote to loneliness is being social. Being social, they say, can lower stress, but for other people, such as those who are neurodivergent, it can heighten stress. It can leave us feeling more depleted afterwards. It can also boost the love drug oxytocin, which many of us have sought out to feel a bond and connection with other people, which later turned into a trauma bond. So the antidote to loneliness, I would not say is being social. I would say it is self-love. If you do not have self-love and self-compassion, then loneliness will be with you predominantly, versus when loneliness does show up, what is more dominant is your own compassion and love. You don't meet your loneliness with self-pity, you meet it with love. Loneliness, like I said, it will show up. The antidote to loneliness isn't going out there and being more social, because for a lot of us, that can be more damaging. What is helpful instead is to be more self-compassionate, more self-loving, and be around people who are compassionate and loving toward you, and understanding and being compassionate toward your need for so much alone time. But that's just how you are. You love it. So there's a few things here to consider in determining whether or not you are avoidant or simply someone who prefers being alone. But if you don't fit into either of these avoidant or peaceful solitude types of ways of living, because you can't be alone, you don't isolate, you don't enjoy solitude, you must always have someone with you. And that stems from your need for external validation. That could be something else of a different sort of self-abandonment, which I'll talk about in one of my next videos. So stay tuned.